My name is Olivia Holloway. I'm 28. 3 months ago, my parents looked me in the eye and handed me a house that was literally falling apart. Cracked walls, rotting floors, no running water, while my twin sister Meredith got a brand new luxury apartment downtown. I didn't argue. I took the rusty keys, drove 40 minutes into the country, and I rebuilt that ruin with my own two hands. Every nail, every board, every coat of paint. I poured $12,000 and 400 hours of sweat into it. And when my mother finally saw what I'd created, she didn't say she was proud. She said, "We're taking this house back. It belongs to your sister now. You have 48 hours." When Meredith arrived with her moving boxes, the color drained from her face. Before I tell you what happened, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly speaks to you. And drop your location and your local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Now, let me take you back to a Friday evening in March, the night my father handed me a set of rusty keys and told me to be grateful. It starts at my parents' dining table. The same mahogany table where every important family announcement has been made since I was 6 years old. My father, Gerald, is standing at the head. He's 58, retired bank branch manager, and he runs this house the way he ran his office. Nobody speaks until he's finished. My mother, Diane, is beside him, hands folded, smiling the kind of smile that's been rehearsed. And across from me sits Meredith, my twin, my mirror image, my parents' favorite. "We've decided," Gerald says, "to give you girls a head start." He slides 2 envelopes across the table, one thick, one thin. Meredith opens hers first. Inside, a brass key and a printed lease agreement for a 2-bedroom apartment in the Lakeview district downtown. Market value, somewhere around $280,000. She screams. She actually screams. Diane pulls her into a hug, and for a moment the whole room is just the two of them, laughing, rocking. I open mine, a single key, brown with rust, a scrap of paper with an address I don't recognize. I look at my father. "What is this?" "It needs some work," he says, "but you're handy." That's it. That's what he gives me. Not a hug, not an explanation, just, "You're handy." I look at my mother. She won't meet my eyes. She's still holding Meredith. And Meredith, my twin sister who shared a womb with me, tilts her head and says, "At least you got something, Liv." She says it softly, like she's being kind, but the corner of her mouth twitches, and I know that twitch. It's not sympathy, it's satisfaction. I fold the paper and slide it into my pocket. I don't say a word. I should have, but I don't. I didn't know it then, but Gerald had deliberately chosen the worst property on my grandmother's old land registry. He'd scrolled past 4 decent options to find the one most likely to break me. Saturday morning. I drive 40 minutes west on Route 9, past the strip malls, past the last gas station, into a stretch of road where the houses thin out and the trees press closer. The address leads me down a gravel path. And when I see it, I stop the car and just sit there. The roof sags on the left side like a broken shoulder. 2 of the front windows are shattered, stuffed with plastic sheeting that's gone yellow. The porch steps are half collapsed. Waist-high weeds swallow the yard, and the whole structure leans slightly east, as if it's tired of standing. The smell hits me before I even open the door. Mildew, rot, something animal. Inside, exposed wiring hanging from the ceiling, rusted pipes, a kitchen floor so warped it buckles under my boot. I sit on the porch, the one step that holds me. I call Marcus Webb, 30 years old, real estate attorney, and the only person who's never lied to me. We met freshman year of college. He's the kind of friend who shows up at 2 in the morning and doesn't ask why. "How bad?" he says. "Roof's caving, wiring's exposed, no running water." He's quiet for a second. "You want me to look at the deed?" "Not yet." My voice cracks and I hate it. "I just need a minute." He gives me the minute. He gives me 5. I hang up and stare at the house, and I think about my grandmother, Lorraine. When I was 9, she taught me to build a bookshelf in her garage. She put my hands on the wood and said, "Your hands know things your head hasn't figured out yet." That phone call with Marcus, I didn't know it then, would end up saving everything. I sit in my truck that night with a notebook and a calculator. Roof, $8,000. Floors, $5,000. Plumbing, 6. Electrical, 7. Paint, drywall, fixtures, another 9. Total estimate, $35,000. My savings account, $12,411. I close the notebook, open it again, start crossing things out. What can I do myself? Floors? Yes. Drywall? Yes. Paint? Obviously. Cabinets? Trim? Built-ins? That's literally my job. I'm a carpenter, a furniture restorer. I've been working with wood since I was 16, and I'm good at it. But my family has never once called it a career. To them, I'm the twin who sands chairs in a sad little workshop while Meredith wears blazers. Monday morning, Meredith calls. Her voice drips with that particular sweetness she uses when she's about to say something cruel. "Oh, sweetie, are you really going to live there?" "It's mine. I'll make it work." "You could just sell it, get a little apartment somewhere." I said I'll make it work. A pause. Then, "Okay, Liv. Good luck with that." That afternoon, Diane texts, "Don't waste your savings, Olivia. Your father knows best." I don't reply. I drive to the hardware store and buy 200 pounds of lumber. The first week, I tear out the rotted kitchen floor on my hands and knees. I haul debris to a rented dumpster. A woman from next door, Ruth, 65 with reading glasses and a no-nonsense jaw, leans over the fence and watches. "Lot of work," she says. "Yeah." She brings me a pitcher of ice water without being asked. Then she says something that sticks. "This land used to belong to Lorraine Price. She your grandma?" I stare at her. "Yes, but how do you know that?" Ruth shrugs. "I've lived here 30 years, honey. I know who owned what." I file that away. I don't understand it yet, but I file it. 6 weeks in, my savings are gone. Not low. Gone. Every dollar I had is now embedded in the bones of this house. New subfloor, fresh drywall, a repaired roof that no longer leaks when it rains. The kitchen has cabinets I designed and built myself, white oak with dovetail joints. The living room wall that was crumbling is now smooth, painted warm white, and if you press your hand against it, it's solid. But the electrical system is a problem. The original wiring is knob and tube from the 60s. I've replaced what I can reach, but the panel needs a licensed electrician. That's $3,000 to $5,000 I don't have. So I run temporary wiring through conduit. It's safe for now. It passes a visual check, but it's not permanent. I write it down in my project notebook, underlined twice. Electrical. Priority. Get licensed electrician, ASAP. I pick up freelance work at night, custom cutting boards, a reclaimed wood dining table for a couple in the next town, $60 here, $90 there. It's not enough, but it keeps the lights on. Literally. Then Gerald shows up. No call, no text. He just appears in the doorway one Tuesday afternoon, hands in his pockets, looking around like a landlord inspecting a rental. He walks through the living room, runs his finger across the mantel I restored from the original fireplace surround, opens a cabinet door, lets it swing, doesn't say nice work, doesn't say anything for a full minute. Then, "Not bad." I wait for more. "But don't get too attached." I feel my stomach drop. "What does that mean?" He looks at me. Flat. Unreadable. I said what I said. He leaves. From the window, I watch him drive away, and I notice something I wish I hadn't. The way he looked at the house wasn't pride. It was appraisal. 2 days later, I stop by Meredith's apartment to pick up a drill I lent her months ago. She says she's busy, can't come to the door. Leave it on the mat, she'll find it later. But I'm already in the hallway, and I see what's stacked outside her door. 11 Amazon packages. Not small ones. Shoeboxes, garment bags, a flat-screen TV still sealed in foam. The packages are piled so high they block the welcome mat. I knock again. "Mayor, I just need the drill." "I said I'm busy, Olivia." Her voice sounds thin, stretched. I step back, and through the gap beneath her door, I can see the living room light flickering. She's watching television at 2 in the afternoon on a workday. Then I hear her phone ring inside. She picks up, and her voice drops to that specific whisper people use when they don't want the walls to hear. "Mom, I just need a little more time. The credit card company keeps calling." Pause. "No, I haven't told him. Please don't tell Dad." And then my mother's voice, tinny through the speaker. We'll figure it out, sweetheart. Don't tell your father. I stand in that hallway for 10 seconds. Then I leave. Quietly. I don't say anything to anyone. It's not my business. That's what I tell myself. But in the truck, a memory hits me. I'm 16. I catch Meredith pulling bills from our grandmother Lorraine's purse in the kitchen. A 20. A 50. Lorraine is napping in the next room. I tell Gerald that evening. He turns on me. Not her. Me. Stop making up stories about your sister. I learned something that night. In this family, the truth only counts when it comes from the right daughter. Now I'm starting to wonder, how much does Meredith actually owe? And what happens when Gerald finds out? 10 weeks after I started, the house is almost unrecognizable. New floors, new walls, a kitchen that looks like something out of a design magazine because I built every inch of it. I post a few photos on Instagram, before and afters. My hands on the timber, the sunrise through the new windows. Comments pour in from friends, old classmates, strangers. Incredible! You did this yourself? This is goals. It feels like the first applause I've ever gotten from anyone who isn't Marcus. Then Thursday evening, no warning. Gerald's car pulls into my driveway. Diane in the passenger seat. They walk in through the front door like they still own the place. Diane drifts through the rooms. She touches the walls, opens the kitchen cabinets, runs her palm across the countertop I sanded and sealed myself. She doesn't comment. She catalogs. Gerald plants himself in the center of the living room. Your mother and I have been talking. My chest tightens. About what? Meredith needs this house. The room tilts. Excuse me? Diane from the hallway. Her apartment. There were complications. She can't stay there anymore. I look at my father. What kind of complications? Gerald ignores the question. The deed is still in my name, Olivia. This house belongs to me. You have 48 hours to move out. My hands are shaking. I press them flat against the counter. My counter. I rebuilt this house. Every wall, every floor. With my property, Gerald says. On my land. My decision. Diane steps closer, voice soft, practiced. We'll make it up to you, honey. This is what's best for the family. I stare at them both. My mother, who won't look at me. My father, who's already decided. I don't cry. I don't shout. I say 5 words. I need to make a phone call. 11 p.m. I'm sitting on the kitchen floor I installed 6 weeks ago, back against the cabinets I built, calling the one person who's never made me feel small. Marcus picks up on the first ring. What happened? I tell him everything. Gerald's visit, the 48 hours. Meredith needs this house, my land, my decision. Marcus is quiet for 3 seconds. When he speaks, his voice is flat and precise, his lawyer voice. Is the deed in his name? He says it is. He never let me see the paperwork. Did you ever receive a copy? A transfer document? Anything notarized? No, he said he'd handle it. That's the first problem. A pause. The second, who actually owns the land? Something clicks in my head. Ruth's voice. This land used to belong to Lorraine Price, my grandmother, my father's mother. Marcus. My neighbor told me this land used to belong to my grandmother. Used to? Or still does? I don't know. Give me 24 hours, he says. Don't sign anything. Don't move anything. Don't respond to your father. Can you do that? I wasn't planning to. Good. And Olivia? Yeah? I've been waiting for you to let me help. His voice cracks just slightly on the word, waiting. And I realize he's been watching me carry this alone for 10 weeks. He asked me about the deed the very first day. I waved him off. I told myself I didn't need a lawyer. I told myself family would work it out. I was wrong. I hang up. At 12:30 a.m., my phone buzzes. Gerald. Clock is ticking, Olivia. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I read the text. I don't reply. For the first time in 28 years, I choose not to make it easier for him. By 9 the next morning, my phone has 17 unread messages. Diane, please don't do this to our family. Just let Meredith have the house. We'll make it up to you somehow. Meredith, Liv, I really need this. I'm in a bad place right now. Please. Aunt Carol, my mother's younger sister, your mother is in tears. How can you be so selfish, Olivia? A cousin I haven't spoken to in 2 years. Family first. Don't be that person. They've activated the phone tree, the entire network, mobilized in 12 hours. And the message is unanimous. Olivia is the problem. Gerald calls at 10. His voice is cold, controlled. The voice of a man who has never once lost an argument in his own house. If you fight this, you won't just lose the house. You'll lose your family. I hold the phone away from my ear and stare at the screen. Then I set it face down on the workbench and pick up a chisel. I'm in my workshop, the small one I rent behind the hardware store on 5th Street. It smells like sawdust and linseed oil, the two best smells in the world. I run my thumb along the edge of a hand-carved chisel my grandmother Lorraine gave me when I turned 18. And I talk to you, because I need someone to hear this. My whole life, I was taught that family is everything, that you sacrifice, that you bend, that you make room. But no one ever taught me that family can also be the people who use love as a weapon, who wrap control in the word sacrifice, who hand you a pile of rust and call it a gift. Then a notification pops up. It's in the family group chat. Aunt Carol, clearly meaning to text Diane privately, has sent a message to everyone. Diane says Meredith owes over $60,000 in credit cards. Gerald doesn't know yet. What do we do? I screenshot it, and I save it. Marcus calls at 4 that afternoon. He doesn't say hello. Olivia, the land was never in Gerald's name. I set down my sander. What? It's held in a trust, a revocable living trust, established in 2012. The trustee and grantor is Lorraine Price, your grandmother. My skin goes cold. That's not. Gerald told me he owned. Gerald lied. Or he assumed. Either way, the county recorder's office has no deed transfer to Gerald Holloway. The land, and any structures on it, belong to the trust. And the sole listed beneficiary, he pauses, is you. I sit down on the workshop floor. Me? You. I haven't spoken to my grandmother in almost 2 years. Not by choice. Gerald told me she was getting confused, that calling her would only stress her out. He said it so many times I stopped questioning it. I stopped calling. I dial her number with shaking hands. It rings 4 times. Hello? Her voice is thinner than I remember, but steady. Grandma? It's Olivia. Silence. 1 beat. 2. I was waiting for this call, sweetheart. I can't breathe. I tell her what Gerald did. The house, the renovation, the 48 hours. All of it, rushing out of me like a dam breaking. She listens without interrupting. When I finish, she says, I set up that trust for you. Not for your father, not for Meredith. For you. The year you turned 18, because I saw how they treated you, baby. I saw it, and I planned for it. I'm crying now. I don't try to stop. I'm old, Olivia, but I'm not gone yet, and that land is yours. I wipe my face. Grandma, thank you. I don't even know what to. There's one more thing I need to tell you, she says, but not on the phone. I'm coming to see you. She hangs up before I can argue. The next evening, Marcus sits at my kitchen table, the one I built from reclaimed pine, and spreads out 3 stacks of paper. Stack 1, the trust deed. Lorraine Price established a revocable living trust in 2012, naming herself as trustee and me as sole beneficiary. The trust holds the property at this address, the land and any improvements on it. It's been notarized, recorded with the county, and it's airtight. Stack 2, every building permit, every contractor receipt, every material invoice from the last 10 weeks, all of them are in my name. When I pulled permits from the city, I signed as Olivia Holloway, property occupant and trust beneficiary. The city approved them, not Gerald, me. Stack 3, a screenshot of Aunt Carol's misfired text. Meredith owes over $60,000 in credit cards. Gerald doesn't know yet. Marcus taps the trust deed. Your father has no legal claim. He can't transfer what he doesn't own. He can't evict you from your own property. So the 48 hours is a bluff, a loud one, but still a bluff. I exhale. It's the first full breath I've taken in 2 days. So what do we do? Marcus leans back. Nothing yet. We wait for them to make their move publicly. Then we respond. Why publicly? Because your father built this lie in front of the family. He told everyone this was his house, his land, his decision. That lie needs to fall in front of the same audience. I look at the papers, the trust deed, the permits, the receipts. For 10 weeks, I've been building this house thinking I was powerless. But the whole time, the power was right here. I just didn't know it. Marcus stands. At the door, he turns. One thing. That temporary wiring you mentioned, get it fixed or documented. Everything in this house needs to be clean. I nod. I write it in my notebook. But I don't call the electrician yet. There's no time. Because what Aunt Carol tells me next changes everything. The phone rings at 8 the next morning. It's Aunt Carol. Her voice is low, rushed, the voice of someone calling from a bathroom with the faucet running. Olivia, listen to me. Your mother is planning a housewarming party. A housewarming. Tomorrow. At your house. She's invited 20 people. I grip the edge of the counter. A housewarming party. For Meredith. At the house I built with my own hands. She's telling everyone you agreed to it, that you're happy to give Meredith the house, that it was your idea. Something cold settles in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter. Something that's been building for 28 years. Carol, why are you telling me this? She hesitates. Because I sent that text by accident, and now your mother won't speak to me. And because I've watched this family punish you for being easy to punish. It's not right. It never was. I hang up and call Marcus. 2 words. It's tomorrow. I'll be there. No hesitation. And so will your grandmother. She's 78, Marcus. She lives 3 hours away. She's already on her way. She called me this morning. My grandmother, 78 years old, bad hip, drives a Buick older than I am, and she's already on the road. That night, I sit in my workshop. I run a sheet of fine grit sandpaper over a scrap of walnut, back and forth. The rhythm steadies my pulse. You know that feeling when your entire family constructs a story about you? A story where you're the selfish one, the unreasonable one, the one who's tearing everything apart, and then they invite an audience to watch you play your part? I set my alarm for 6 a.m. Tomorrow I walk into my own house. Either for the last time or the first. I arrive at 9. The front door, my front door, the one I stripped, sanded, and restained by hand, is propped open with a doorstop I've never seen before. Inside the house is unrecognizable in a different way now. Diane has been here since dawn. New throw pillows on the couch, a tablecloth I didn't buy, platters of food covering the countertops I installed, and hanging from the living room archway, in pink and gold balloons and a glitter banner. Welcome home, Meredith. 20 people fill the rooms. Aunts, uncles, cousins, Diane's book club friends, 3 neighbors I've waved to but never met. They're all holding paper plates and plastic cups, chatting like this is perfectly normal, like this is a celebration. Meredith stands in the center of the living room, hair blown out, new dress. She's laughing. Gerald has his hand on her shoulder, proud father pose, chest out. He sees me in the doorway. His voice carries across the room. Olivia came to congratulate her sister. That's what family does. Every head turns. 20 smiles aimed at me. I feel them like heat lamps. Diane appears at my elbow with a glass of lemonade. Be gracious, honey. This is hard for all of us. Great Aunt Margaret, Gerald's older sister, pats my arm. Such a generous thing you did, Olivia, giving your sister this beautiful house. I look at her. I didn't give anyone anything. The pats stop. Margaret blinks. Gerald's voice drops, low, a warning. Olivia, not here. Meredith glides over, voice silk. Liv, we talked about this. It's for the best. I look around the room. 20 pairs of eyes. Not one of them knows the truth. And every single one of them is looking at me like I'm the villain. Outside the window, I catch a glimpse of Ruth. She's standing on her porch, watching through the glass, slowly shaking her head. It happens in the kitchen. My kitchen. Meredith follows me in, and the moment we're out of earshot, the mask falls off. You should thank me, honestly. I turn around. For what? For giving you a reason to finally do something with your life. She leans against the island I built from scratch, white oak and brass hardware, and examines her nails. You'd still be sanding chairs in that sad little workshop if it wasn't for me. My jaw tightens. I built this kitchen, Meredith, these cabinets, that island, with my hands. And now they're mine. She says it like she's reading a weather report. That's how it works in this family, Liv. I thought you understood that by now. She opens a cabinet. Inside, Diane's casserole dishes, Diane's serving bowls, already unpacked, already at home. Meredith pulls out a glass, fills it from the faucet I connected. Drinks. Looks at me over the rim. Dad said you can take your tools when you leave. I don't need them. She walks back into the living room. I hear Gerald's voice rise over the noise. If I could have everyone's attention, please. I follow her out. Gerald is standing by the fireplace, the surround I restored from the original 1967 woodwork, raising a glass. To family, he says, and to Meredith's beautiful new home. 20 glasses lift, 20 voices repeat it. To Meredith. I stand in the back of the room. My hands are fists at my sides. My throat is burning. But I don't say a word. Not yet. I'm listening for something. A knock at the door. A car pulling into the driveway. Any second now. I know. I know some of you are screaming at your screens right now. Trust me, I was screaming inside too. But here's the thing. If you've ever been the one your family took for granted, the one they expected to just go along with it, drop a fire in the comments. And if you want to see what happened when I finally stopped being silent, make sure you're subscribed. Because it's coming. Gerald is mid-sentence. Something about sacrifice. Something about what it means to provide for your children. When the knock comes. 3 sharp raps. Firm. Professional. Gerald frowns. Diane glances at the door. Nobody moves. I do. I cross the room and open the front door. Marcus stands on the porch, gray suit, leather briefcase. His face is calm, but I can see the edge in his posture, coiled, ready. He nods at me once. Behind him, moving slowly up the porch steps, gripping a carved wooden cane with both hands, is my grandmother, Lorraine Price, 78 years old, silver hair pinned back, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Gerald's voice from behind me. Who invited you? Marcus steps inside. No one. I'm Ms. Holloway's legal counsel. She doesn't need a lawyer, Gerald says. This is a family matter. With respect, Mr. Holloway. Marcus sets his briefcase on the dining table. Property transfer is a legal matter. The room goes still. 20 people holding plates and cups, frozen mid-bite. Meredith's smile dissolves. Then Lorraine walks in. I take her arm. She pats my hand without looking at me. Her eyes are locked on Gerald. She surveys the room slowly. The balloons, the banner, the food on counters that Olivia built. She reads the glitter letters. Welcome home, Meredith. She turns to Gerald. The room holds its breath. She says one sentence. Quiet, clear. The kind of sentence that lands like a gavel. Gerald, whose land do you think this is? Gerald opens his mouth. Nothing comes out. Lorraine pulls out a chair, sits down, folds her hands on the table. Sit down, son. You're going to want to sit for this. Marcus opens the briefcase. The click of the latches is the loudest sound in the room. He pulls out a document, crisp, bound, notarized. He sets it on the table so everyone can see the county seal. If I may have the room's attention. His voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. This property, the land and every structure on it, is held in a revocable living trust established by Lorraine Price in 2012. The sole beneficiary is Olivia Holloway. Gerald takes a step forward. That's not possible. My mother gave me... I gave you nothing, Gerald. Lorraine's voice cuts the room like a blade. She doesn't raise it. She doesn't need to. I let you use the address for mail. I let you believe what you wanted. But I never transferred the title. It was never yours. Marcus continues. Mr. Holloway, you hold no deed, no title, and no legal authority to transfer this property to anyone. Furthermore, every building permit, every contractor invoice, every material receipt for the renovations performed over the past 10 weeks is filed under Olivia Holloway's name. She is the legal owner of all improvements. The county recorder's office can verify every page. Diane, voice cracking. Mother, how could you do this to us? Lorraine looks at her daughter-in-law, steady, unblinking. I did this for Olivia, because you two couldn't. The seesaw starts. 20 people who walked in thinking this was a housewarming are now realizing they've been invited to a lie. Great Aunt Margaret turns to Gerald. Gerald, you told us this was your house. Gerald says nothing. His face is the color of raw steak. And then Lorraine adds quietly, to no one and everyone, I set up this trust the year Olivia turned 18. Because I saw how you treated her, Gerald. I saw it. And I planned ahead. For a moment, nobody breathes. Then Meredith steps forward. Her hands are shaking. Her perfect composure, the composure she's worn like armor her entire life, is cracking at the seams. This doesn't change anything. Mom and Dad said, Gerald sharp. Meredith, be quiet. No! Her voice pitches high, desperate. I need this house. I don't have anywhere else to go. The room freezes. Not whispers now. Silence, the kind that swallows sound. Gerald turns to her, slowly. What do you mean you don't have anywhere else? Meredith's eyes are wet. Her lips move before her brain catches up. The apartment. I lost it. I couldn't keep up with the payments. Gerald stares at her, then at Diane, his wife, who has been clutching a dish towel to her chest like a lifeline. You lost the apartment, Gerald says. The apartment I gave you 3 months ago. Diane's chin drops. Gerald, I was going to tell you. You knew? The room ruptures. 20 people watch as Gerald's face cycles through shock, betrayal, fury. Meredith is crying, real tears now, mascara streaking. Diane is crying too, reaching for Gerald's arm, and he pulls away like her hand is on fire. Aunt Carol stares at the floor. Great Aunt Margaret picks up her purse. I think, she says quietly, we should all go home. People start moving. Coats, keys, mumbled goodbyes. No one looks at Gerald. No one looks at Meredith. They look at me. Quick, uncertain glances. And then away. I'm standing in the corner of the room, my grandmother's hand in mine. I haven't moved. I haven't spoken. Gerald turns to me. His voice is broken glass. You planned this. I meet his eyes. No, Dad, you planned this. I just showed up. The house empties. Paper plates on the counter, half-eaten casseroles. A balloon drifts across the floor and settles against the wall. Gerald and Diane sit on the sofa, my sofa, that I reupholstered from a thrift store frame. Meredith is somewhere outside. I can hear her crying in her car through the open window. Marcus steps forward. He holds out a white envelope. Mr. Holloway, this is a formal cease and desist letter. You are not to enter this property again without Olivia's written consent. Any attempt to claim ownership, alter locks, or contact Miss Holloway with threats regarding this property will be documented and forwarded to the county district attorney's office. Gerald looks at the envelope. He doesn't take it. Marcus sets it on the coffee table. Everything is documented. The trust deed, the permits, the receipts. The law is clear. Diane turns to me. Her eyes are swollen. Olivia, please. Please what, Mom? Please give up? Please be the easy one again? Please fold so you don't have to face the mess you made? I don't say any of that. What I say is, Mom, I love you, but loving someone doesn't mean letting them take everything from you. Diane's face crumbles. Gerald stands. He doesn't look at me, doesn't look at Marcus, doesn't look at his mother. Lorraine, still seated, still holding her cane, speaks one last time. You could have been proud of her, Gerald. That would have cost you nothing. He walks out the front door without a word. Diane follows. The car starts. Gravel crunches. Then it's quiet. Marcus puts a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I look around the room. The banner hangs crooked. A cup of lemonade sweats on the mantel I restored. Not yet, I say. But I will be. That evening, I changed the locks on the front door. I do it myself. 4 screws, a new deadbolt, a brass handle I've been saving for the right moment. My hands are steady. My breathing is even. It's just hardware. But it feels like drawing a line in concrete. Ruth comes over with a pot of yellow chrysanthemums. She sets it on the porch railing and looks at me through her reading glasses. I always knew that house was yours, honey. Yeah? Your grandparents built it together in '67. I was 17. I watched them carry the lumber. I hold the pot and let that settle into me. 1967. My grandparents' hands on this same frame. My grandmother's trust protecting it decades later. And now my hands finishing what theirs started. I tear down the banner, pop the balloons, sweep the floors, load the leftover food into bags for Ruth and her neighbor. And then I sit in the middle of the living room, the room I rebuilt from bare studs, in perfect silence. It's the first silence that isn't fear, it's just quiet. My phone buzzes. Marcus. Get that electrical work done, Liv. Seriously, I call the electrician, schedule it for next Thursday. Then, while clearing Diane's things from the hall closet, I find something. A letter. Yellowed envelope, no stamp. Hand-delivered and hidden. The handwriting is Lorraine's. My dear Olivia, your grandfather and I built that house together in 1967, the summer we married. I always meant for it to go to someone who would love it the way we did. It was always meant for you. The letter is dated 5 years ago. Gerald hid it. 5 years of my grandmother's words, stuffed behind someone else's coats. I pressed the letter to my chest. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Real quick, if you've ever had to draw a line with someone you love, someone who should have protected you, comment "My House" below. I read every single one. And if this story is hitting close to home for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Now let me tell you what happened next. Because my family wasn't finished. The fallout isn't loud. It's slow. It's the kind of damage that spreads like water finding cracks. 1 week after the housewarming, Great-Aunt Margaret stops returning Gerald's calls. She tells Aunt Carol she's deeply embarrassed to share a last name with him. Cousin Katie, Margaret's daughter, my age, the one who always sat next to me at Thanksgiving, calls me on a Tuesday night. I always thought something was off, she says. I just didn't know what it was. Nobody asked. I know. I'm sorry no one stood up for you sooner. Gerald's position as honorary elder advisor at Grace Lutheran Church, a title he's held for 6 years, built entirely on the image of a devoted family man, quietly disappears. The pastor doesn't fire him, he simply stops calling. Gerald's name is removed from the weekly bulletin. No announcement, just absence. Diane goes dark on Facebook. No more family photos. No more "blessed to have my girls" posts. For the first time in a decade, her profile picture is a sunset instead of a Holloway family portrait. Meredith gets her first call from a collections agency, then her second. Without Gerald and Diane running interference, $62,000 of credit card debt has her name on it. All of it. Ruth tells me something one morning over the fence. Your father came by last Tuesday, stood outside the house for 10 minutes, just looking, then he drove away. I don't know what to do with that, so I file it the way I file everything I'm not ready to feel. Then an email lands in my inbox. From a reporter at Homestead and Craft magazine. She found my renovation photos on Instagram. She wants to feature the house. She wants to know who did the work my father said wasn't a career. Gerald calls on a Thursday, early afternoon. I'm in my workshop fitting a mortise joint for a client's bookcase. His name flashes on my screen and my hands go still. I answer. We need to talk, he says. His voice is tired. Not soft. Gerald doesn't do soft. But worn, like a tool that's been used without maintenance. I'm listening. Your grandmother isn't thinking clearly. She's old. She doesn't understand what she did with that trust. I close my eyes. We should contest it, he continues. The family should have a say. I'll get a lawyer. We can... Dad, he stops. She set up that trust with her own attorney. It's been notarized, recorded, and active for over a decade. Lorraine is perfectly competent. You know that. Silence. I can hear him breathing. I'm your father, Olivia. That land should have been mine. It was never yours, Dad. I set down the chisel. And neither am I. The line goes quiet for so long I check to see if he's hung up. He hasn't. "You're making a mistake," he says finally. The same voice he used when I told him I was becoming a carpenter instead of going into banking. The same flat, dismissive tone. "No," I keep my voice even. "I made a mistake every time I believed you'd treat me fairly. That's over now." I end the call. My thumb shakes over the screen. I want to tell you it felt powerful. It didn't. It felt like pulling a splinter out of a wound that's been infected for years. Necessary, painful, and long overdue. Setting boundaries with someone you love is never the triumphant moment people think it is. It's quiet, it's lonely, and sometimes the bravest thing you can say is simply, enough. 2 weeks later, Saturday morning, I'm on the porch sealing a window frame when I hear a car pull into the gravel drive. The engine cuts, a door opens and doesn't close for a long time. Meredith walks up the path, no makeup, hair pulled back in a knot. She's wearing a sweatshirt I've never seen, gray, too big for her, the kind of thing she'd normally never be caught dead in. Her eyes are swollen. She looks 10 years older than she did at the housewarming. She stops at the bottom of the porch steps. My porch steps, the ones I rebuilt. "I'm not here to ask for the house." I set down the brush. "Then why?" "I don't know how to fix my life, Liv." Her voice is raw. No performance, no practiced sweetness, just a woman drowning. "I owe $62,000. I haven't slept in a week. The collections people call every morning at 7. I look at my twin sister, and for the first time, I don't see the golden child. I don't see the one who always got the bigger portion, the warmer hug, the louder applause. I see someone who was handed everything and taught nothing, someone who never learned to build because she never had to. "I can't fix that for you," I say. "And I won't." "I know. But I can give you the number of a financial counselor Marcus knows. The rest is on you." She nods, wipes her face, turns to go. At the bottom step, she stops, reaches into her bag, pulls out a small cardboard box, and sets it on the railing. "I'm sorry," she says. "For the kitchen. For all of it." I look at her. "I hear you." I don't say I forgive you, because I'm not there yet, and I don't owe anyone forgiveness on a timeline that isn't mine. After her car disappears down the gravel road, I open the box. Inside, 2 thin silver bracelets. My grandmother gave them to us when we were 8, one for each twin. Meredith kept both for 15 years. 1 month later, a photographer stands in my living room with a DSLR camera and a reflector board, and I think, this is the strangest thing that's ever happened to me. The reporter from Homestead and Craft is named Dana. She's in her 40s, all business, with a tape recorder and a notebook full of questions. She walks through every room, touching the trim work, crouching to examine the dovetail joints on the kitchen cabinets, running her palm along the fireplace surround. "Who did the millwork?" she asks. "I did." "And the floors?" "Me." "The cabinetry?" "Also me." She looks up from her notebook. "Who taught you to build?" I smile. "My grandmother." The article runs 3 weeks later. Title: From Ruin to Remarkable. How one woman rebuilt a 1967 home with her own hands. 4 pages, 12 photos. They use the before and after of the kitchen as the centerfold spread. Ruth appears in one of the photos. She's leaning on the fence between our yards, grinning, holding up a lemonade like a toast. Within a week, I get 3 custom furniture commissions: a dining table, a set of bookshelves, a nursery crib in white ash. My workshop finally has a name: Holloway Woodworks. I hang the sign myself. Marcus calls to congratulate me. "Trust is fully recorded. Title insurance is done. No one can touch it." "Thank you, Marcus, for everything. That's what friends are for." A beat. "Now please tell me you called the electrician." I laugh. Actually laugh. "Done. Last Thursday. Full panel replacement, new wiring, inspection passed." Thank God. That weekend, I get an email from the community center downtown. They want to know if I'd teach a woodworking workshop for women. I say yes. The class fills in 3 days. Lorraine comes to stay for a week in May. She arrives in the Buick with a flat of marigolds, a bag of potting soil, and a photo album I've never seen. We plant the flowers in the front yard, side by side on our knees in the dirt, just the way she taught me to sandwood. Slow, steady, with your whole hand. She tells me this is the exact spot where she and my grandfather planted their first garden in the summer of 1967. Marigolds and zinnias, the same flowers. Your grandfather would have loved what you did with the kitchen, she says, pressing soil around a seedling. I found your letter, I tell her. The one Dad hid. She doesn't look up. I wrote 3 letters. He hid all of them. But you're here now, baby. That's what matters. 3 letters. 3 attempts to reach me. 3 times Gerald stood between us and decided I didn't deserve to hear from the woman who loved me most. We sit on the porch when the sun gets low. The porch I rebuilt. Ruth brings over a pitcher of lemonade without being asked. It's become a ritual. The new neighbors across the road, a young couple who moved in last month, wave from their driveway. I wave back. Lorraine reaches over and takes my hand. Her skin is paper thin, but her grip is iron. The best revenge isn't revenge at all, she says. It's the life you build after. I look out at the yard, the marigolds, the fresh paint, the house that was a ruin 4 months ago. I didn't receive fairness from my family, but I built it for myself, with concrete and oak and the truth. I know, Grandma. She squeezes my hand. I know. A week after Lorraine leaves, I sit down at my desk, the one I built from reclaimed cherry, the first piece of furniture I ever sold, and I write an email. Mom, Dad, I love you. That hasn't changed, but I will not accept being treated as less than. I will not be the daughter you take from to give to someone else. I will not shrink so that someone else can fill the space. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with respect, not control, not obligation, not guilt. I'm not closing the door, but I'm choosing who gets to walk through it. Olivia. I hit send. I don't get a reply. Not that day, not that week. And for the first time, I'm okay with the silence, because it's my silence now. I chose it. It wasn't pushed on me. Friday evening. I sit in the living room. The house is quiet. Through the window, I can see Ruth's porch light, the marigolds in the yard, the road that leads to town, where 3 clients are waiting for furniture I designed. On my workbench, inside the top drawer, sit 2 silver bracelets, the ones Meredith returned. I don't wear them. But I haven't thrown them away either. Someday maybe they'll mean something different. But not today. I look around this room. Every surface tells a story. The floors my knees remember, the walls my arms ache from, the cabinets my grandmother's hands inspired. This isn't the house my parents gave me. That house was a ruin, a punishment, a message that said, you are worth less. This house is the one I built, and I am the one who decides what it means. I don't know what happens next with my family, but I know what happens next with me. Because for the first time in 28 years, that's my call. You know, when I started this story, I thought the house was the point. The renovation, the trust deed, the moment Gerald's face went white in front of 20 people. And yeah, that mattered. All of it mattered. But sitting here now, on this porch my grandparents built, and my hands rebuilt, I realized the house was never really the thing. The thing was the moment I stopped waiting for my family to see my worth and started building it for myself. I spent 28 years being the easy one, the one who folds, the one who absorbs, and I told myself that was love, that keeping the peace was the same as being at peace. It's not. It's just silence with a nicer name. I won't tell you what to do with your family. I don't know your story. I don't know your Gerald or your Meredith or the specific way they've learned to make you feel small, but I will tell you 3 things I wish someone had told me a long time ago. Boundaries are not punishment. They're not walls you build to hurt people. They're doors. And you get to decide who walks through. Your hands know things your head hasn't figured out yet. My grandmother said that to me when I was 9, and I'm only now understanding what she meant. Sometimes you have to start building before you believe you can. And the last one, the hardest one, You do not owe anyone a version of yourself that makes their life more comfortable at the cost of your own. That's it. That's what the ruin taught me. Now I'm curious. If you had to pick one moment from this story that hit you the most, which was it? Was it the housewarming party, the trust deed reveal, or Meredith on the porch with that little box? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, your stories are braver than mine. If you want another one like this, there's a video in the description I think you'll love. Hit subscribe if this one meant something to you, and I'll see you next time. My parents sold my 10-year-old daughter's antique cello, the one my grandmother gave her, with a notarized letter and everything, for $107,000. They spent every cent building a pool at my sister's house. When my 91-year-old grandmother found out, she didn't yell. She smiled and said, "That cello was in my trust." 3 days later, my parents opened a certified letter and went pale. My name is Diana, 34 years old, a paralegal and a single mom, and this is the story of how my family stole from my daughter, and how a 91-year-old woman taught them that paperwork hits harder than shouting. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let me take you back to last September, the week everything fell apart. Our apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window that stuck, and a living room where every piece of furniture had a story that ended with, "It was on sale." We rented it from my family, or what I thought was my family's property. More on that later. But the thing that made that apartment feel like a home wasn't the furniture. It was the sound. Every afternoon around 4:15, Lucy would sit by the window in her bedroom, pull Harriet from the case, and play. Harriet was her cello. A 1923 Heinrich Müller, German-made, with a hairline crack across the top plate that had been restored sometime in the 60s. If you ran your fingertip along the varnish, you could feel where the old wood ended and the repair began, like a scar that healed clean. My great-grandmother Eleanor gave it to Lucy when she was 7, at her very first recital. Eleanor had played that cello at Carnegie Hall in 1958. She'd carried it across 2 marriages, 1 cross-country move, and 60-some years of life, and she put it in my daughter's hands like she was passing along a secret. "This cello is worth more than a car," Eleanor told me afterward, her voice dry and precise, the way former music professors talk. "But the real value is that it remembers every concert hall it's ever been in." Lucy named it Harriet, after a composer she'd read about in school. She'd whisper, "Good morning, Harriet," every time she opened the case, like she was waking up a friend. That's the thing my parents didn't understand. They saw $107,000 sitting in a bedroom. Lucy saw her best friend. Eleanor had signed a notarized gift letter when she gave Lucy the cello. I scanned it into my Google Drive that same week, and the original went into Eleanor's filing cabinet with her attorney. At the time, I thought that was just Eleanor being thorough. Turned out it was Eleanor being smart. Sunday dinners at my parents' house were a performance. My father Gerald sat at the head of the table like it was a throne. My mother Pamela served, smiled, refilled glasses, and made sure everyone saw her doing it. My younger sister Kristen would show up 20 minutes late with her twins, 2 7-year-old boys who ran through the house like small tornadoes, and no one said a word. Kristen's husband Brett would settle into the good chair, the one with the armrest, and talk about his quarter at the dealership like anyone cared. And then there was Lucy. My daughter sat at the far end in a folding chair they kept in the garage. The folding chair, for a 10-year-old. I'd asked twice for a real chair. Pamela said, "We only have 6 seats at the table, Diana. Don't be difficult." That September Sunday, 3 weeks before everything imploded, Kristen was complaining about summer. "The boys are going crazy cooped up. They need outdoor activities. Every house on our street has a pool. It's embarrassing." Pamela nodded like Kristen had just described a humanitarian crisis. "You're right, honey. The boys need space to play." Gerald grunted agreement. Lucy, sitting quietly in her folding chair, said, "Grandpa, my recital is next month. I'm playing the Elgar piece." "More cello?" Gerald didn't look up from his plate. "Why don't you try a sport, like your cousins?" Lucy went quiet. I watched her fold her napkin into a small square, the way she did when she was swallowing something too big to say. I changed the subject. I always changed the subject. What I didn't notice, what I should have noticed, was Kristen texting under the table. I caught a flash of her screen, The words pool contractor and a number with a lot of zeros. I didn't think anything of it then. I would later. The second week of September, I had to fly to Seattle for work. My firm was handling a property dispute, and the senior partner needed me on site for 3 days to pull title records and coordinate with opposing counsel's office. It wasn't glamorous. It was a courtyard Marriott and a rented Nissan and a lot of fluorescent-lit conference rooms. But it was my job, and I was good at it, and I needed the hours. Lucy had music camp the same week, a 5-day intensive at a middle school across town. They provided practice instruments, so the cello would stay home. I tucked Harriet into Lucy's bedroom, closed the case, and locked her door. Not because I was worried, just habit. You protect the things that matter without thinking about it. The morning I left, my mother called. "Let me hold on to the spare key while you're gone, just in case there's an emergency." I handed it over. Pamela smiled, that tight-lipped smile she uses when she's being helpful in a way that costs her nothing. "Don't worry, honey, everything will be exactly where you left it." That was the last honest-sounding sentence she ever said to me. 2 days into my trip, my father stopped by the apartment. I know this because my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Okada, mentioned it when I got back, casually, like it was nothing. "Oh, your dad came by Tuesday. Said he was checking the pipes." She paused. "He had a dolly with him, though. Seemed like a lot for pipes." Gerald was a retired general contractor. He could open any lock in any house built after 1970 without breaking a sweat. I'd always thought of that as a fun fact about my dad. It stopped being fun very quickly. I came home on a Thursday, one day before Lucy. I dropped my bag, poured water, and walked into her bedroom to check on things. The lock on her door had been changed. I stood there, key in hand, staring at a brand-new brushed nickel deadbolt where the old brass one had been. For a second, I thought maybe the building manager, but no, this was my parents' handiwork. Gerald's handiwork. I found the spare key on the kitchen counter, unlocked the new deadbolt, and pushed the door open. The cello case was in its usual corner, but it was wrong, too light against the wall, leaning at an angle Harriet's weight would never have allowed. I crossed the room in 3 steps, knelt down, and unzipped the case. Empty. The velvet lining still held the impression of the instrument, a ghost shape where Harriet had rested. The bow was gone. The rosin was gone. The small cloth Lucy used to wipe the strings was gone. Everything. My heart did something it had never done before. It didn't race. It just stopped. One long, hollow beat of nothing, and then it restarted cold. I called my mother. "Where is Lucy's cello?" Pamela's voice was light, rehearsed. "Oh, honey, your father took it in for maintenance. It needed restringing or something." "Which shop?" "I don't remember the name. Ask your father." I called Gerald. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called a 3rd time. Voicemail. The next afternoon, Lucy came home from camp. She dropped her bag at the door, ran to her room, saw the case, smiled, and opened it. She didn't cry. That's the part that broke me. A 10-year-old standing in front of an empty cello case, holding her bow hand out like she was still waiting for the music to start. "Mom," she said, "where's Harriet?" I knelt in front of her and held both her hands. "I'm going to find out, I promise." I called Eleanor that night. No answer. Her caregiver Linda said she was at a doctor's appointment and would call back tomorrow. I called Sonia instead. "Something is very wrong," I said. And then, just before midnight, I checked my email and saw a notification from the homeowner's insurance portal. Claim number 4417, high-value item removed from premises. The next morning, I drove to Kristen's house. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want her to have time to rehearse. I turned onto her street and saw it before I even parked. A backhoe in the yard, a trench 6 feet deep carved into the lawn, and 2 guys in hard hats laying rebar. A pool. They were building a pool. Brett stood at the edge of the trench with his arms crossed, supervising like he'd ever built anything in his life. Kristen was leaning against the fence with her phone out, taking a selfie with the construction behind her. She'd already picked a filter. I got out of the car. "Kristen, who's paying for this?" She looked up, startled, then recovered. That quick Caldwell smile. "Oh, Mom and Dad. Birthday present for the boys." "How much?" "I don't know exactly, like 100,000 something? I didn't handle the details. 100,000 something. She said it the way you'd say, a couple $100. Like it was nothing. Like it wasn't my daughter's future sitting at the bottom of that trench. I drove home and called my father again. This time, he picked up. His voice was flat, almost bored, the tone he uses when he's decided a conversation is beneath him. Diana, calm down. The cello was a family asset. I sold it to a dealer in Seattle. Cascade Vintage Instruments, $107,000. Your mother and I decided to use the funds for the family. The boys needed a pool. That cello was Lucy's. Grandma Eleanor gave it to her. There's a notarized gift letter. Gerald paused exactly 1 second. Then, your grandmother is 91 years old. She doesn't remember what she signed. He hung up. $107,000. He said it like he was reading a grocery receipt. Not like he'd just stolen 3 years of my daughter's joy and 60 years of my grandmother's legacy. But he'd made one mistake. He gave me the dealer's name. 2 days later, Gerald called a family meeting. His words, not mine. A family meeting, like we were a corporation and he was the board chair. It was held at my parents' house, naturally. Gerald sat at the head of the dining table. Pamela sat beside him, tissues already in hand, preloaded for the performance. Kristen was there, arms folded, jaw set, playing the role of the wronged younger sister. Brett hovered by the fridge, cracking open a beer like this was a spectator sport. Even Aunt Diane and Uncle Roger had been summoned. Gerald's sister and brother-in-law, the family audience. I came alone. Sonia was watching Lucy. Gerald opened with his closing statement. Diana is blowing this out of proportion. The cello was a family item, stored in a family property. We made a practical decision to use it for something that benefits all the grandchildren. Pamela dabbed her eyes. I just want fairness for everyone. Lucy can learn on another instrument. She's young, she'll adjust. Kristen leaned forward. My boys have never gotten anything from this family. Lucy has Grandma Eleanor wrapped around her finger. She has camp, she has lessons. It's not fair. Uncle Roger cleared his throat. Aunt Diane stared at her plate. Nobody looked at me. I let the room go quiet. I let the silence sit for 3 full seconds, long enough for everyone to hear the refrigerator hum. Then I said, that cello was a notarized gift to a minor. This isn't a family decision. It's theft. Gerald's face darkened. You want to talk lawyers? Fine. But remember who owns the roof over your head, Diana. I stood up. I picked up my jacket. I walked to the door. I'll remember, I said. And so will you. I left. No shouting, no tears, no scene. I had something better than a scene. I had a plan. Within 48 hours of that meeting, I received 11 phone calls. Pamela had been busy. She'd called every relative with a pulse and told them her version of events. Diana was threatening to sue her own parents over an old musical instrument. Diana was ungrateful. Diana was tearing the family apart. Aunt Diane texted first. Don't embarrass the family, Diana. This isn't who we are. Uncle Roger followed. Your parents raised you. They sacrificed. Show some respect. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years sent me a message on Facebook. Heard you're making trouble. Shame on you. 11 calls, 14 texts. Not one of them asked what actually happened. Not one asked about Lucy. Sonia came over that night. She sat at my kitchen table, scrolled through my phone, and shook her head slowly. This isn't family, she said. This is a cartel with Thanksgiving dinners. I laughed, even though nothing was funny. From the other room, I could hear Lucy practicing. Her school had lent her a student cello, a mass-produced thing with a tinny, flat sound, nothing like Harriet, but Lucy played it anyway. Scales, then arpeggios, then a halting attempt at the Elgar piece. She didn't complain. She never complained. That's the thing about Lucy. She just kept going. And that's when I decided, not with drama, not with a speech, just a quiet shift like a deadbolt turning. I opened my laptop, navigated to Google Drive, and found the file. Eleanor_gift_letter_notarized.pdf. I opened it and read every word. I, Eleanor Marie Whitfield, irrevocably gift the 1923 Heinrich Müller cello, serial number HM-1923-0447, to my great-granddaughter Lucy Ann Caldwell, to be her sole and personal property, dated, signed, notarized, stamped by the state of Oregon. I picked up my phone and dialed Eleanor's number. Grandma, I need to talk to you. About the cello. And about the house. I should tell you something about the way I grew up, because it explains why it took me this long to fight back. When I was 17, I got accepted to Portland State. Partial scholarship. I was proud. First in my family to go to a university. My father sat me down at that same dining table and said, "The college fund is for Kristen. She's going to need it. You can figure it out." I worked 2 jobs for 4 years. I graduated. I paid off my student loans over 9 years. Kristen went to community college for 1 semester, dropped out, and married Brett. The college fund paid for her wedding. When my marriage ended, Lucy was 2, I called my mother for help. Her first words were not, "Are you okay?" They were, "You couldn't hold on to a husband and now you want to come home?" But 2 weeks later, Pamela called back. She'd found me a place, a rental, she said, owned by the family. The apartment Lucy and I lived in now. The catch? I'd help with Sunday dinners, drive Kristen to appointments, and do Gerald's books during tax season. No formal agreement, just obligation dressed up as generosity. I did it. For 4 years, I did it all. Because I was afraid that if I stopped, Lucy would lose the only extended family she had. I was afraid my daughter would grow up thinking she didn't belong anywhere. That fear had kept me obedient for a long time, but sitting at my kitchen table that night, listening to Lucy play a borrowed cello that sounded like a screen door, something cracked. Not dramatically, quietly, like a hairline fracture in old wood, the kind you can feel if you run your fingertip along the surface. Pamela had said it was the family's house. Gerald had always called it my house. One of them was lying. Or maybe both of them were. I needed Eleanor to tell me the truth. Eleanor called me back the next evening on FaceTime. She was sitting in her armchair, the green velvet one with the brass tack trim, wearing a cream cardigan buttoned to the collar. Behind her, I could see the upright piano and the framed photo from Carnegie Hall, 1958. At 91, Eleanor Whitfield still sat with the posture of a woman who'd spent 50 years in front of an orchestra. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The empty case, Gerald's admission, the dealer, the pool, the family meeting, the 11 phone calls. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for 5 seconds. I counted. Then she said, in a voice as level as a tuning fork, "Diana, the house your father lives in, I never transferred it to Gerald. It's held in the Whitfield family trust. He's a permissive occupant. The deed is in the trust's name, always has been." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "Grandma, Dad has always said, Gerald says many things that aren't true. He's been doing it since he was 12. She adjusted her glasses. "The cello is also connected to the trust. It's listed on the asset schedule, section 4.2. I gifted it irrevocably to Lucy, yes. But the insurance policy runs through the trust. Selling it without my signature as trustee isn't just wrong, Diana. It's conversion. It may be theft." I sat there, in my kitchen, laptop still open to the gift letter, and let that settle. 25 years. My father had lived in that house for 25 years, told everyone it was his, and never once looked at the deed. "What do we do?" I asked. Eleanor's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened, a precision I recognized from every recital I'd ever watched her conduct. "I'll call Marcus in the morning. You keep those files safe, and Diana—" She paused. "Stay calm. We don't need to yell. We just need the right signatures." I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, a legal pad, and 4 cups of coffee, and I did what I do best. I pulled records. First, the notarized gift letter. Already in Google Drive, time-stamped, backed up, PDF, check. Second, Gerald's texts. I scrolled back through our thread and found it. His confirmation of the sale, the amount, the dealer's name. Cascade Vintage Instruments, $107,000. I screenshotted every message, saved them with dates. Third, I searched the dealer's name. Cascade Vintage Instruments, LLC, based in Seattle. Their website had a current inventory page, and there she was. Harriet, listed under 1923 Heinrich Müller cello, German manufacture, restored. The asking price was $125,000. Gerald had sold her for $18,000 less than what she was already listed for. He hadn't even negotiated. He'd just wanted the money fast. I screenshotted the listing with a timestamp. Fourth, and this one made my hands shake, I logged into the old family Gmail account. The one my parents had set up years ago for shared bills and subscriptions. Gerald had never changed the password. In the sent folder, I found the wire transfer confirmation from their bank. $107,000, received from Cascade Vintage Instruments LLC, deposited into the personal checking account of Gerald R. Caldwell. Not a family account, not a trust account, Gerald's checking account. He'd pocketed every cent and then distributed it however he saw fit. I saved it, backed it up, printed a hard copy. By 2 in the morning, I had a folder on my desktop labeled Receipts. 14 files, every one of them a nail. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing on the wet street outside. The money had gone into Gerald's account, but where had it gone from there? Did Kristen get it directly, or did Gerald pay the contractor himself? I'd find out. But first, I had one more place to look. The family Gmail was a gift that kept giving. I'd been looking for bank records, but what I found was worse, or better, depending on your perspective. In the inbox, buried under a chain of Costco coupons and dentist reminders, was an email thread between my mother and my sister. Kristen had started it. The date was September 3rd, 2 full days before I'd left for Seattle. Mom, the cello guy said he can do $107,000. That's enough for the pool and the patio. Tell Dad to do it before Diana gets back. Pamela replied 4 hours later. I'll handle Diana. She'll get over it. I read it 3 times. Then I read it a 4th time, slowly, word by word, because I needed to be sure I wasn't imagining things. Kristen had contacted the dealer. Not Gerald. Kristen. She'd gotten the quote, done the math, and told my mother to make it happen, specifically before I came home. My father was the one who walked into my daughter's room with a dolly and carried out a 90-year-old instrument. But my sister was the one who'd picked the target and set the timeline. Pamela was the cover, Gerald was the muscle, Kristen was the architect. I screenshotted the thread, every email, every timestamp. I saved them into the receipts folder, right between the wire transfer and the dealer listing. 15 files now. I called Sonia at 6 in the morning. She picked up on the second ring because she's a nurse and nurses don't really sleep. I have everything, I said. Emails, texts, transfer records, the dealer listing, all of it. Good. What now? Eleanor's calling Marcus Webb this morning, her trust attorney. Sonia paused. Diana, you've never done this before, stood up like this. I know. I looked down the hallway toward Lucy's door, but nobody's ever come for my kid before. Marcus Webb's office was on the 4th floor of a sandstone building in downtown Portland, the kind of building that smells like old paper and leather and quiet authority. I'd been in law offices before. I worked in one, but this was different. This was Eleanor's territory. Eleanor arrived in a black town car. She wore a gray wool coat, pearl earrings, and carried a folder 2 inches thick. She walked through the lobby without pausing, and the receptionist said, "Good morning, Mrs. Whitfield," the way people greet someone they've known for decades. Marcus Webb was mid-50s, silver-haired, thin-framed glasses, the kind of man who looks like he's never raised his voice in his life and never needed to. He shook my hand, offered coffee, and spread the documents across his desk like a dealer laying out cards. He reviewed everything, my receipts, Eleanor's trust documents, the gift letter, the deed. Then he leaned back and laid it out in 3 clean steps. 1. The cello was an irrevocable gift to Lucy, but it's still listed on the trust's insurance schedule. Gerald selling it without Eleanor's authorization as trustee constitutes unauthorized disposal and conversion of a minor's gifted property. We file a police report. 2. We send a demand letter via certified mail. Gerald has 14 days to return the full $107,000 to the trust. If he doesn't, we file a civil suit. 3. The house. He looked at Eleanor. As trustee, you have the right to revoke permissive occupancy. Under Oregon law, Gerald is not a tenant. He's a gratuitous occupant. 30-day written notice, and he's required to vacate. Eleanor nodded once. She picked up the pen Marcus offered and signed every document he placed in front of her. Her hand trembled slightly. She was 91, but her signature was straight and sure. Marcus looked at me. "Mrs. Whitfield, you have standing, documentation, and a very clean case. They have a pool they can't afford and a house they don't own." The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office smelled like floor wax and burnt coffee. I sat in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights and waited 19 minutes for a deputy to call my name. I'd brought everything: the notarized gift letter, screenshots of Gerald's texts, the wire transfer confirmation, the trust asset schedule, and the email chain between Kristen and Pamela. All printed, organized in a manila folder with labeled tabs. Paralegal habits die hard. The deputy, a calm-faced man in his 40s named Herrera, listened without interrupting. He took notes on a form. He asked questions I'd already anticipated. When was the instrument removed? Who had access? Is there documentation of ownership? I answered each one. I handed over each printout. He looked at the wire transfer confirmation for a long time. "Ma'am, with the value exceeding $1,000, this falls under ORS 164.055, theft in the first degree. We'll also note conversion of property belonging to a minor. You'll receive a case number today." He handed me a card with the case number written on the back. I thanked him. He didn't blink when I told him the suspects were my parents. He'd probably heard it before. That thought made me sadder than the report itself. I sat in my car afterward in the parking lot, engine off, hands on the steering wheel. Rain was starting. That thin Portland drizzle that doesn't seem like much until you realize you're soaked. Sonia called. "You okay?" "I just filed a police report against my parents." Silence. Then, "How do you feel?" I watched the rain bead on the windshield. "Lucy asks about Harriet every single day. She doesn't cry about it, she just asks. Like if she keeps asking, the answer will change." I turned the key. "I'm fine." "Okay, I need to pause here for just a moment. Before we go on, if you've ever had someone in your family take something that belonged to your child, something that mattered, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if you haven't hit subscribe yet, now's a good time, because what happened next? My parents had absolutely no idea what was coming. Let's keep going. Gerald found out about the police report faster than I expected. Pamela had a friend who worked at the county dispatch center. I don't know what exactly was said or how the information traveled, but by 8 o'clock that evening, my father was standing on my front porch, knocking hard enough to rattle the screen door. I opened the door but kept the chain on. Lucy was in her room with the door closed, headphones in, practicing fingerings on her borrowed cello. Gerald's face was a color I'd never seen on him, somewhere between brick red and ash gray, like his blood couldn't decide whether to boil or drain. "You called the police." Not a question, a sentence. "I filed a report. There's a difference." "On your own parents, Diana. Your own parents." His voice was low, controlled, the way it always got right before the volume came. "Let me tell you something. You live in this house because I allow it. I will change every lock on this building by tomorrow morning. You and Lucy can find somewhere else to sleep." I looked at him through the gap in the chain. He stood on my porch like he owned it, like he'd always owned it, like the ground beneath his feet was a gift he'd given himself and could take back whenever he wanted. "This house isn't yours, Dad." His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? You heard me. I've lived here 25 years, and you've never once looked at the deed." He opened his mouth, closed it. His jaw worked silently, like a man chewing something that wouldn't break down. "You're done, Diana. You hear me? Done." I closed the door, locked it, slid the chain into place. From Lucy's room, I could hear the faint sound of scales on a tinny cello. She was still practicing, still going. The thing about entitlement is this: it never checks paperwork. It just assumes. Pamela's counterattack came the next morning, and it came on Facebook. She posted at 7:14 a.m. I know because I checked the timestamp later when I screenshotted it. The post was a masterpiece of manipulation, the kind of thing they should teach in psychology courses as a case study. "Heartbroken today. My oldest daughter is trying to sue her own parents over a piece of furniture. We gave everything to raise our girls, and this is how we're repaid. Please keep our family in your prayers." Underneath, she'd attached a photo of me at age 6, in a yellow sundress, holding an Easter basket. Little Diana, sweet and obedient, the kind of child who would never cause problems. The comments came fast. 312 friends, and apparently all of them had opinions. So sorry, Pam. Some children just don't appreciate what they have. Praying for you and Gerald. Stay strong. This is what happens when kids think they know better than their parents. A few people tagged me. I didn't respond. I didn't correct. I didn't post my side of the story. I did screenshot the entire post, every comment, every reaction, every timestamp. And I saved it to the receipts folder, 16 files now. A piece of furniture. That's what Pamela called a 1923 cello that had played at Carnegie Hall. A piece of furniture. That told me everything I needed to know about what my mother valued, and what she didn't. Sonia called after seeing the post. She's building a narrative, you know that, right? Public sympathy, private pressure. This is textbook. I know. So what do you do? I looked at my laptop screen, where Marcus Webb's email sat in my inbox with 2 attachments, a demand letter and a 30-day notice to vacate. I let the paper do the talking. When? Certified mail goes out tomorrow. The next morning, Marcus Webb walked into the downtown Portland post office and sent 2 envelopes via USPS certified mail, return receipt requested. Envelope 1, addressed to Gerald R. Caldwell and Pamela S. Caldwell, a formal demand letter from the Whitfield Family Trust, requiring full restitution of $107,000 within 14 calendar days. The letter detailed the unauthorized sale, cited the notarized gift, referenced the trust's asset schedule, and stated plainly that failure to comply would result in a civil action for conversion and unjust enrichment. Envelope 2, same address, a 30-day notice to vacate. Eleanor Whitfield, as trustee and property owner, was revoking permissive occupancy of the residence at the address my parents had called home for 25 years. The notice cited Oregon revised statutes, referenced the trust deed, and gave them exactly 30 days from the date of receipt to remove themselves and their belongings from the property. A third copy was sent to Kristen Caldwell Moore at her own address, formal notice that the trust was pursuing restitution for funds derived from the unauthorized sale, and that any party who received or benefited from those funds may be subject to legal action. Marcus texted me the tracking numbers that afternoon. I saved them. That evening, I sat on the couch and opened the USPS tracking app. The 2 envelopes to my parents were already in transit, moving through the Portland sorting facility like small, quiet bombs. Eleanor called me before bed. Her voice was calm, the way it always was. "It's done," she said. "Now we wait." "Grandma, do you have any regrets?" She was quiet for a moment. "I regret trusting Gerald as long as I did. I don't regret this." I refreshed the tracking app one more time before I turned off the light. In transit to destination. The next day, the status changed. Delivered. Signed by G. Caldwell. Sonia lived 3 blocks from my parents' house. She wasn't spying. She'd lived in that neighborhood since before my parents moved in. But she did happen to be driving past at 3:17 that afternoon, and she saw what she saw. Gerald was standing at the mailbox. He'd pulled out a white envelope, the kind with the green certified mail sticker, and he was reading it right there in the front yard. Sonia said his face went through 3 colors in 10 seconds. Normal, red, then a shade of pale she'd only ever seen in the ER. Pamela came out the front door. She must have heard something or sensed it, because she was already moving fast. Gerald handed her the letter without a word. Pamela read it standing on the lawn, and her hands started shaking so hard that the pages fluttered in the afternoon air. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Gerald's name on the screen. His voice was different. Not commanding. Not bored. Not dismissive. Scared. "Diana, what did your grandmother do? This letter, it says we have to leave the house. This is our house. I've been here 25 years. The deed says Whitfield Family Trust, Dad. It's always been Grandma's house. You just never checked." She's confused. She doesn't know what She knows exactly what she's doing. She signed every document herself. "I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer." "You should. His number is on the letter, Marcus Webb. He's been Grandma's attorney for 20 years. I'm sure he'd appreciate hearing from you. Gerald made a sound I'd never heard him make. Something between a cough and a groan, the sound of a man whose floor has just become a trapdoor. You'll regret this, Diana. Maybe, but Lucy won't. I hung up. I set my phone face down on the table, and I sat very still for a long time, listening to the quiet. For 25 years, my father told everyone it was his house. He never once looked at the deed. That's the thing about entitlement, it doesn't check paperwork. Gerald hired an attorney the next day, a real estate lawyer from a firm in Lake Oswego, $300 an hour type, paid with a $3,000 retainer that Gerald pulled from what was left of the cello money. The attorney did what any competent attorney would do. He pulled the deed from Multnomah County records, reviewed the trust documents that Marcus Webb provided upon request, and sat Gerald down in a conference room to deliver the news. The house belonged to the Whitfield Family Trust. It had never been transferred to Gerald. There was no purchase agreement, no quitclaim deed, no record of any transaction. Gerald had been living there by the grace of his grandmother, and grace, as it turned out, had an expiration date. Gerald tried adverse possession. His attorney explained that adverse possession requires hostile, open, and continuous use for 10 years, and Gerald's occupancy was permissive, not hostile. You can't claim you own something when the owner invited you in. Gerald tried laches, arguing Eleanor waited too long to act. His attorney pointed out that Eleanor had acted within weeks of learning about the sale. No delay, no laches. Gerald's attorney gave him one piece of advice. Negotiate. You don't have standing to contest the eviction. Focus on the restitution. See if Mrs. Whitfield will accept a payment plan. Gerald reportedly stood up from the conference table, said something I won't repeat, and left the office without shaking hands. That was $3,000 in retainer fees gone. Plus, the contractor for the pool had invoiced the next phase, $38,000 due upon completion. The pool that was already 60% built, the pool that my daughter's cello had paid for. The money was running out. The clock was ticking, and Gerald still hadn't paid back a single cent. Pamela made her move on a Tuesday. She showed up at Eleanor's house with a bouquet of sunflowers and a tin of Danish butter cookies, the same brand she brought every Christmas. Like clockwork, and insincerity had the same rhythm. Eleanor's home aide, Linda, answered the door and later told me every detail. Pamela sat in the living room on the edge of Eleanor's settee, clutching the sunflowers like a shield. Eleanor sat across from her in the green velvet armchair and let Pamela talk first. Grandma Eleanor, the family is falling apart. Diana has gone too far. She's filed police reports. She's bringing lawyers. This is destroying us. If you could just call it off, everything would go back to normal. Please, for the family. Eleanor let the silence hang. She poured Pamela a cup of tea from the pot Linda had prepared. She set the cup on a saucer, placed it in front of Pamela, and folded her hands. Pamela, I let my grandson live in my house for 25 years without charging a cent. I gave my great-granddaughter a cello that I played since I was 19 years old. And you and Gerald sold it to build a swimming pool. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I've read the emails. She paused. I also know that you're sitting in my house, drinking my tea, and asking me to forgive the theft of a 10-year-old child's most treasured possession so that your family can be comfortable again. Pamela's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Eleanor stood, slowly, deliberately, the way a woman with 91 years of practice stands when she's done with a conversation. The door is behind you. Marcus will be in touch. Pamela left. Linda said she was crying before she reached her car. Eleanor sat back down, picked up her tea, and took a sip. Then she turned to Linda and said, That woman brought me grocery store cookies. She couldn't even bother with homemade. 14 days. That was the window Marcus gave them. 14 days to return $107,000. On day 15, Gerald sent Marcus an email. One line. The money has been spent. I don't have $107,000. No apology, no plan, no acknowledgement that the money had never been his to spend. Marcus printed the email, placed it in the case file, and did exactly what he'd said he would do. He filed a civil suit in Multnomah County Circuit Court, Eleanor M. Whitfield, trustee of the Whitfield Family Trust, versus Gerald R. Caldwell and Pamela S. Caldwell. Claims: conversion, unjust enrichment, breach of fiduciary duty regarding trust-associated assets. I was listed as guardian ad litem on behalf of Lucy. The court set a hearing date 6 weeks out, fast-tracked, Marcus said, because a minor's property was involved and the documentation was comprehensive. A judge had reviewed the initial filing and found enough merit to expedite. But before the hearing, there was the matter of service. A process server arrived at my parents' house on a Thursday afternoon at 4:45 p.m. The timing wasn't accidental. It was the hour when most of the neighbors were pulling into their driveways, getting the mail, walking the dog. The server knocked. Gerald opened the door. "Gerald Caldwell?" "Yes." "You've been served, sir. Have a good day." The server handed him the papers, turned, and walked back to his car. Gerald stood in the doorway holding a blue-backed legal complaint, and behind him, through the screen door, Pamela's face appeared, white as the curtain she was gripping. Mrs. Okada from next door was watering her roses. She saw everything. She told Sonia, and Sonia told me. The neighborhood was starting to talk. The family image my parents had spent 30 years constructing was cracking along every seam. Kristen's turn came next, and it arrived not from me or from Eleanor, but from the pool contractor. The contractor, a company called Pacific Edge Pools, had been watching the situation. Word travels fast in the trades, and when a client's father-in-law gets served with a lawsuit for $107,000, contractors pay attention. They called Kristen. "Mrs. Moore, we need a written guarantee for the remaining balance, $38,000 due on completion." Kristen: "My parents are handling it. Your parents are being sued for $107,000. We need the guarantee from you." Kristen and Brett didn't have $38,000. They didn't have half of that. Brett's credit was maxed from the new truck he'd bought in June, the one he drove to the dealership where he sold cars he couldn't afford himself. They tried a home equity line. Denied. They tried a personal loan. Denied. Pacific Edge Pools filed a mechanic's lien on Kristen's property for the unpaid balance. Kristen called me, and for the first time in this entire ordeal, she was sobbing. "Are you happy now? The family is destroyed because of you. My house has a lien on it. Brett is talking about leaving. Are you satisfied?" I let her finish. I waited until the only sound was her breathing. "Kristen, you sent Mom an email on September 3rd telling her to sell Lucy's cello before I got home. You picked the target. You set the timeline. You calculated that $107,000 would cover the pool and the patio." Dead silence. "Everything that is happening to you right now started with that email. Not with me." She hung up. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not guilt. Just the flat, clear sense of a ledger being balanced. 1 week later, Brett Moore filed for legal separation. He wanted no part of the debt. "All right, we're getting to the part everyone's been waiting for. But before we do, if this story is hitting close to home, you're not alone. Hit that like button so more people can find this, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Stick around, because the courtroom scene is next. My father's face was something I will never forget. Here we go. Multnomah County Courthouse, 3rd floor, courtroom 3B. It smelled like old wood and recycled air, and the overhead lights gave everything a faintly yellow cast, like a photograph that's been sitting in a drawer too long. I sat on the left side of the gallery, next to Marcus Webb. Eleanor sat beside me, back straight, hands folded over her gray wool coat. She looked like she'd been sitting in courtrooms since before the building was built. Sonia was 2 rows behind us, there because I'd asked her to be, and because she'd said, "You're not doing this without backup." Gerald and Pamela entered from the right. Gerald wore a blazer that didn't quite fit anymore, something he'd pulled from the back of a closet. Pamela clutched a tissue. Their attorney, a younger man I didn't recognize, carried a thin folder. Thin because there wasn't much to put in it. Kristen wasn't there. She wasn't a named defendant, or maybe she just couldn't face it. Gerald's attorney made his arguments. Adverse possession, denied. The court noted permissive occupancy. Laches, denied. Eleanor acted within weeks. Then he tried family gift, claiming the cello was communal family property, not Lucy's. Marcus stood. He presented the notarized gift letter. The trust asset schedule, section 4.2. The wire transfer confirmation. The email chain between Kristen and Pamela, time-stamped, authenticated. The police report. And finally, Pamela's Facebook post, calling a 1923 Carnegie Hall cello a piece of furniture. He laid each document on the table like he was dealing a hand no one could beat. The judge, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain, turned to Gerald. "Mr. Caldwell, did you have authorization from the trustee to sell this instrument?" Gerald straightened in his chair. "It was in my house." "That's not what I asked." The courtroom went silent. Gerald opened his mouth, then closed it. The judge removed her glasses. "I've seen enough. I'll issue my ruling." The ruling took 4 minutes to read. It felt like 4 hours. The judge put her glasses back on and spoke without inflection, the way people do when the facts are so clear that emotion would be redundant. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The evidence establishes that the 1923 Heinrich Müller cello was irrevocably gifted to the minor child, Lucy Caldwell, and that the sale of this instrument was conducted without the authorization of the trustee or the consent of the child's legal guardian. She turned a page. Gerald and Pamela Caldwell are ordered to make full restitution of $107,000 to the Whitfield Family Trust. If unable to pay in full, a structured repayment plan will be established, subject to wage garnishment if payments are not maintained. Another page. The 30-day notice to vacate, issued by the trustee, is upheld. The respondents have 30 calendar days from today's date to remove themselves and their personal property from the residence. She looked over her glasses at Gerald. Additionally, the court notes that the antique instrument dealer, Cascade Vintage Instruments, is directed to cooperate in the return of the cello, pending financial arrangements between the trust and the dealer. Gerald stood up. His chair scraped against the floor. "This is my house. I've lived there for 25... Mr. Caldwell." The judge's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "The deed says otherwise. Sit down." He sat. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles went white. Pamela was crying into her tissue, quietly, mechanically, like a faucet someone had forgotten to close. I looked at Eleanor. She wasn't smiling exactly, but there was something on her face, a stillness, a settledness, like a chord that had finally resolved. She reached over and held my hand. Her fingers were thin and warm. "You did the right thing," she whispered. The gavel came down once. A single, clean sound that echoed off the wood-paneled walls and settled into the silence like a period at the end of a very long sentence. 30 days later, a U-Haul truck backed into the driveway of the house on Birchwood Lane, the house my father had called his for a quarter of a century. I wasn't there. I didn't go to watch. I'd made that decision early. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a correction. Sonia drove past on her way to work and told me what she saw. Gerald loading boxes in silence, not angry, not shouting, just moving with the heavy, mechanical rhythm of a man who'd run out of arguments. Pamela carrying a lamp through the front door, not looking at anyone, not even Gerald. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Gresham. Pamela's sister had helped them find it. Rent was $1,400 a month, more than Gerald had paid in total over 25 years of living rent-free in Eleanor's house. 2 weeks after the move, Marcus sent the family, Aunt Diane, Uncle Roger, the cousins, a 1-page summary of the case at Eleanor's request, not to humiliate, to correct the record. The summary was factual: the trust deed, the unauthorized sale, the restitution order, the eviction, no editorial, no opinion, just paper. The phone calls stopped. All of them. Aunt Diane never texted me again. Uncle Roger went silent. The cousin who'd messaged me, "Shame on you," deleted her Facebook comment. I know because the notification arrived at 2 a.m., the hour when guilt tends to find people. The first restitution payment hit the trust account 3 weeks after the ruling, $2,500 from Gerald Caldwell. It was automatic, set up through the court. Total remaining balance, $104,500. At $2,500 a month, It would take roughly 43 months to repay in full. Gerald would be 65 by the time he finished paying for a pool he built with his granddaughter's stolen inheritance. I tried not to think about that as anything other than math. It was a Wednesday in late October when Marcus called and said, "It's done. You can come pick her up." The cello. Cascade Vintage Instruments had cooperated fully once the court order was presented. They returned the instrument to Marcus's office, and Eleanor fronted the reimbursement from the trust fund, the same fund Gerald would be paying back into for the next 3.5 years. I drove downtown alone. Marcus had the case waiting on his conference table. I unlatched it and folded back the lid, and there she was, Harriet. The 1923 Heinrich Müller, with the restored crack across the top plate, the same warm amber varnish, the faint smell of old wood and rosin that Lucy used to say smelled like a library that plays music. I ran my thumb across the strings. They hummed, low and deep, the way a voice sounds when it's been holding its breath. I drove home with the case buckled into the passenger seat, which is exactly as ridiculous as it sounds, but I didn't care. I parked, carried it inside, and set it in the corner of Lucy's room. The same corner, the same angle, as if it had never left. Lucy came home from school at 3:40. She dropped her backpack at the door, walked to her room, and stopped in the doorway. She didn't run, she didn't shout. She walked to the case slowly, knelt down, and unzipped it. She looked at the cello for a long moment, checking maybe, to make sure it was real. Then she reached in and touched the neck, right where the varnish was thickest. "Hi, Harriet," she whispered. I stood in the hallway, one hand on the doorframe, and I cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, the way you cry when something that was taken has been returned and you realize how tightly you'd been holding yourself together. My daughter didn't ask where Harriet had been, she just started tuning. That evening, after Lucy was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and drafted an email. I sent it to 3 addresses: Gerald, Pamela, and Kristen. It was short. I'd spent years over-explaining myself to people who never listened. This time, I let the words be small and final. Effective immediately, I am establishing no contact boundaries. All communication regarding the restitution will go through Marcus Webb's office. Do not contact me or Lucy directly. I wish you well, but I need to protect my daughter and myself. Gerald replied within the hour. One sentence. "You'll regret this." I didn't respond. Pamela sent 6 emails over the next 3 days. Long, winding messages full of scripture quotes, childhood memories, and sentences that started with, "After everything we've done for you." I didn't open a single one. I forwarded them to Marcus unopened and asked him to flag anything legally relevant. Kristen sent one text message, 4 days later. "I'm sorry." I read it. I sat with it. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, out of honesty. I wasn't ready to forgive, and I wasn't going to pretend I was. Maybe someday. Maybe not. That was allowed. The next Saturday, I went to the hardware store on Burnside and bought a new deadbolt. A Schlager. Brushed nickel, top of the line. I installed it myself. I wasn't as good at it as Gerald the contractor, but it locked, and that was enough. 2 keys, one for me, one for Lucy, nobody else. That night, I stood at the front door and tested the lock 3 times. Each time it clicked, something inside me settled a little deeper. Family is not a debt you inherit. And a locked door isn't cruel. It's a boundary. 3 months after the ruling, Saturday afternoons became ours. Every week, Lucy and I would drive to Eleanor's house, a craftsman bungalow on a tree-lined street in southeast Portland, with a front porch that sagged in exactly the right way and a garden that Eleanor still supervised from her window. Linda would let us in, and Eleanor would be waiting in the music room, a small, sun-filled space at the back of the house where the upright piano lived, alongside 60 years of framed concert programs and a metronome that still ticked like a heartbeat. Lucy would set up Harriet. Eleanor would open the piano. And for 1 hour, sometimes 2, the house would fill with music, the cello and the piano winding around each other the way 2 voices do when they've known the same songs for a very long time. Eleanor taught Lucy the vibrato technique she'd learned from her own teacher at Juilliard in 1952. "It comes from the arm," she'd say, placing her thin hand on Lucy's wrist. not the finger. The finger follows. The arm decides. Lucy listened with the focus of a child who understood she was receiving something that couldn't be bought or sold. One Saturday, Eleanor said to her, "You keep this cello, Lucy. But more important, you keep the music. Nobody can take that. Not ever." Lucy nodded, her bow resting on the strings, and said, "I know, Grandma Eleanor." I sat in the armchair in the corner, the same green velvet chair where Eleanor had sat when she'd dismissed Pamela, and I drank tea and listened. Sometimes I'd close my eyes and let the music fill the room like warm water. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was holding anything up. No obligation, no performance, no folding chairs, just music and tea and the kind of quiet that comes after you finally stop tolerating the noise. In November, I started therapy. It was the first time I'd ever sat across from a professional and talked about my family without making excuses for them. Her name was Dr. Langford, and in our second session, she said something I carry with me still. "Diana, setting a boundary isn't a betrayal. It's the first honest thing you've done in a family that rewarded dishonesty." I sat with that for a long time. Here's where things stood 5 months after the court ruling. Gerald had paid $12,500 into the trust, 5 monthly payments of $2,500. He had $94,500 left. He and Pamela were living in the Gresham apartment, and from what little I heard through Sonia, they kept to themselves. Gerald had taken a part-time consulting job with a small construction firm. Pamela volunteered at a church thrift shop. They were quiet. Whether that was peace or just exhaustion, I couldn't say. Kristen's house sold in January. The mechanic's lien, plus Brett's attorney fees from the separation, ate through most of the equity. The pool in the backyard was 60% finished, a concrete shell with no tile, no water, no purpose. The listing photos showed it covered with a blue tarp, like a wound someone had bandaged and walked away from. Kristen moved into a rental with the twins. Brett moved to Bend. Eleanor's house, the one on Birchwood Lane, sat empty for a month after Gerald left. Then Eleanor offered it to me and Lucy. $1 a month. "It's still in the trust," she said. "But it should have someone playing music in it." Lucy was accepted into the Portland Youth Symphony in October. She was the youngest cellist in the ensemble. Her audition piece was the Elgar Cello Concerto, the same piece Eleanor had played at Carnegie Hall in 1958. I looked at our life, the therapy, the house, the orchestra, the quiet Saturday afternoons, and I thought, I didn't lose my family. I lost the version of family that was never really mine. What I kept was better. December. Portland Youth Symphony Winter Recital. Arlene Schnitzer, Concert Hall. The lobby smelled like wet wool and perfume, and the particular electricity of a room full of parents trying to find their seats. I was in row 5, center section. Eleanor sat to my left, wearing her gray wool coat and the pearl earrings she'd had since the 60s. Her posture was immaculate. Sonia was on my right, already recording on her phone even though the lights hadn't dimmed yet. The hall went dark. The stage lights came up, warm amber, the same color as Harriet's varnish. Lucy walked out from the wings. She was wearing a black dress we'd picked out together at a consignment shop on Hawthorne. Her hair was pulled back. She held the cello by the neck, carefully, the way you carry something that's both fragile and unbreakable. And she sat down, adjusted the end pin, and placed the bow across the strings. She didn't look nervous. She looked ready. The conductor raised his baton. The orchestra breathed in, and Lucy began to play. The Elgar Cello Concerto, first movement. The same piece Eleanor had played at Carnegie Hall in 1958 on the same instrument, 66 years apart. The sound filled the hall, deep and warm and aching, the way a cello always sounds when it's telling you something that words can't reach. I closed my eyes. I let it wash over me. Every fight, every document, every phone call, every locked door, and I let it all go quiet. Eleanor reached over and took my hand. She squeezed once. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The music ended. The hall erupted. 800 people applauding. But the sound I'll remember most is the one just before. The last note, hanging in the air like a held breath, before Lucy lowered her bow and smiled. Not a performer's smile, a kid's smile, the smile of a 10-year-old who knows she's safe. I sat there, finally still. Not because the fight was over, but because the right people were in the right seats. Thank you so much for staying until the very end. If Diana's story reminded you that setting boundaries, even with the people who raised you, is not betrayal, it's survival, then give this video a like. Subscribe if you haven't, and check the description below for another story about a mom who discovered her family had been hiding a house from her for 15 years. I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe. Protect your people. And remember, you don't owe anyone your peace. Wherever this story takes you, I hope you carry this with you. Protecting your child is never making drama. Sometimes the quietest thing you do is the strongest. And a locked door isn't cruel, it's just a boundary with a key.